BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
Welcome to Rice TVX. On today's Rice Report, I am joined by returning guest of the channel, Ammon Bundy, who is currently running for governor of Idaho in 2022. You can get more information at votebundy.com. And I'm also going to have links down below and above for the playlist that I created with his 2 previous appearances. If you have not watched those videos yet, I definitely encourage you to do so. Before we get into it, make sure you visit ricetvx.com and sign up for my mailing list so you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. Plus, you can find my social media links, contact information, get Rice TVX merch coming soon via the shop, and more. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, check out and explore my channels. Make sure you subscribe to Rice TVX and Rice TVX2, both can be found on YouTube. And hit the notification bell to get alerted to new videos. Also, you can follow me on Odyssey and Library, where I have my full catalog of videos plus extra content. And you can also find Rice TVX on BitChute. If you want to support Rice TVX and what I do directly, I have my PayPal, Cash App, plus my cryptocurrency addresses via my Cointree link below in the video description. You can also join my Patreon channel, where you will get early access to some of my videos, exclusive content, and more, with 4 different levels of membership, all offering something different. If you are looking to purchase and invest in precious metals, gold and silver are both good safe haven assets to hedge against the financial collapse we are experiencing. Check out Money Metals Exchange. I partnered up with them and you can get a free ½ ounce of silver. Visit moneymetals.com, be a first-time buyer, purchase a minimum of $100, and use the promo code RICE. You get a free ½ ounce of silver, and it's another way to support the channel. I will include links down below for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything I talk about on today's show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show is a returning guest. He's been on the show a few times. I'm going to have links down below and above for the playlist that I created with his 2 previous appearances. Today, I am joined by Ammon Bundy for a 3rd time. Ammon, I appreciate you coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because I think a lot's transpired in your life since we talked. It's been about 3 or 4 months ago, but I don't think that you had announced, or it could have been longer. I don't think that you had announced your run for governor of Idaho. And that's currently what you're doing. You're on the campaign trail. We've got a website, votebundy.com. Before we get into it, though, how you been?
I've been good. Good. My family's doing well. You know, we had a good summer. It was busy. It seemed like it went real fast, and it's hard to believe that the leaves are falling off the trees right now. But anyway, but I've had a good summer, and my family's doing well, and everybody's happy.
Sweet. I'd love to hear that, man. And you've got a large, beautiful family, and I know that that's one of the most important things to you. We've talked a lot about people's rights in the past. And if people want to know more about people's rights, they're in the previous conversations that me and Ammon did. So make sure you're checking out those previous ones. But it's kind of a network that unites neighbors in a way that will help them to defend their families, their faith, their freedom, and their future. And you can do this by going to the website, peoplesrights.org, and signing up for the text messages. And then you can get hooked up with the web interface and all that good stuff. But I know you're not using people's rights as a campaign mechanism, that you're doing this all completely on your own. So you want to kind of fill me in, Ammon, on what made you decide to run for governor after all the stuff that you've dealt with this government in lots of different fashions, whether it's local governments, whether it's the federal government. You've had quite a few run-ins. And I'm curious, what made you decide to run for governor in Idaho?
Well, the reality is that the government was originally designed to defend liberties, and that's what it was designed for. That's what it was created for. That's what we pay our taxes for, right or wrong or indifferent. We could definitely have a good discussion about that. But that's the idea, right? That we uh, have this entity that we call government, and the purpose for that government is to make it so that we can live free, so that we can trade freely with each other, so that we can travel, so that we can worship how we want to, when, where, and how, and who, and all of that. And that's the idea. And if anybody has a question about that and they think that it's not the idea, well, then go to the Declaration of Independence. And there was a war that was fought to be independent from this government that was the British government that was being oppressive upon the people. And we declared, the people here in this country at the time declared independence from them, because they were like, what's the point? There's no reason to be part of this Great Britain. All they are is taxing us, and all they are is abusing us, and they're using their power and the force, and we're funding it and paying for it. What's the point?
Right.
And so anyway, so I look at that, and on many levels I've united people, um, and I've have been successful in many ways of uniting people, and I have brought people together to defend rights, and those rights in many cases have been defended. Um, but then I see this government, particularly the federal government. The federal government has become very wicked. I mean,
That's an understatement.
that is an understatement, but it's become very wicked, and anybody who doesn't recognize that just doesn't understand what's going on, or they don't understand what wickedness is, or they don't, or they don't understand history. Um, so I start to look around, because I'm a realist, and I'm very involved in and understand what it's like to actually have your liberty stripped from you and thrown in prison and abused, and spent months and months and months in solitary confinement while they just destroy everything that you've built, and including trying to destroy your family. They don't give a damn about people.
Now
They
you
only get
are you referring to the what you just mentioned? Are you referring to the incident that took place on your father's ranch?
Yeah, that's one of them. But I've seen it my entire life, where they've done this to my, people, including myself and my family, but they've done this to other people, and they just, they're doing it right now to those people that went to the Capitol on January 6th. I mean, they're doing the same thing to them. And, whether anybody agrees or not with what they did, that's beside the point. Um, uh, this is a political prosecution. They're using their power to destroy political enemies, to isolate them, to demonize them so that they can destroy them. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I'm getting to this long answer.
No, it's good. You're good, man.
So I see this real threat, and I know it's a real threat because I've actually experienced it. And so I start to, really see that there is a tremendous need for the people to unite to defend their rights. And I organized the People's Rights Network, and we did a lot of good there. But to be honest with you, most people, even in that network, are not willing to truly defend themselves.
Mm.
They still are relying on this mechanism that we created many, many years ago, a couple centuries ago, to defend their liberties, and they still have a lot of faith in that. And so then I look at the political climate of Idaho, and I start saying, well, is there a way that we can use this mechanism that's supposed to be here, in the first place? Can we use this to defend ourselves against, the federal government and others who are destroying our liberties? And what are our liberties? The right to worship, the right to travel, the right to trade with each other, the right to decide what you're going to do with your families. Oh yeah, the right to go outside your house without a man-made filter on your face. Oh, and you know what? Maybe the right to go and buy something from somebody and travel. Just those simple rights, go to church, that type of stuff. That's liberty. And I start to think, well, maybe there's a possibility that the mechanism that was designed here in Idaho to defend liberty, maybe because of the type of people that live in Idaho, maybe we can use that mechanism to actually do what it's supposed to do. And understanding the positions of government and kind of how it's been broken down, I could see an opportunity as governor to actually use the resources of the state to actually defend the people, use it properly, and to minimize the threat of the state as well while you're doing it. So I'm being very open about that. I'm giving the people a choice of whether they want the state to be a totalitarian police state or they want the state to be a mechanism to help people secure liberty. And that's the choice they get when they vote for me.
I love it, man. I love it. And so before we started recording, I was like, I'm gonna have to ask you why you decided to run for governor. And I mean, it's a great answer. And one of the things that I have been noticing, Ammon, is okay. So you're the first person running for governor that I've interviewed. I've interviewed 3 separate candidates for running for president, 1 independent, 2 with the Libertarian Party, and interviewed somebody that was running for Senate. Just a few weeks ago, interviewed somebody that's running for Congress in Harlem. I can't remember the district. So, and the interview that I did with the guy running for Congress in Harlem was there was a lot of things that I said in that interview that I was going to kind of repeat in this, which was I've interviewed you, talking to you about Constitution, talking to you about law, talking to you about some of these things that the legal fiction movement have talked about. And it really seems like one of the most effective things that we can do is to run for office and start changing the system from the inside. As opposed to trying to break the system down or change or try from an outside perspective, change it. It seems like it would be easier to have a bunch of politicians, a bunch of people in office who stand up for the Constitution, who stand up for the values of what America was founded on, and continue that momentum. Because I really feel like since studying history, since it seemed like somewhere around the Civil War, that's where everything kind of got really screwy. Where we were supposed to have a restoration period that was supposed to restore the nation back to what it was, the federal government just ended up becoming more and more and more powerful. And then a lot of that stuff got sealed with the creation of the Federal Reserve, the Securities Acts, the Banking Acts in the 1930s, the confiscation of gold. And now here we are today, where it's like people like me and you are going to be made out to be bad individuals because we believe in what America was founded on, which is a really sad thing to think about. What are your thoughts on just the idea that a patriot can be looked at as a domestic terrorist?
Well, we have to understand that it's nothing new. When when those who do not value individual liberty, or that they want power more than they want to afford their neighbors freedom, then when they get in power and when they take over the basically the force of law, they always begin to use it against their what they might deem as their political enemies. We just want to be left alone to live, but they can't allow that, and that's what I keep using the term wicked, and I mean to use that term intentionally, but people have to understand that wicked is definition is morally very bad, disgustingly unpleasant, and causing or likely to cause harm, distress, or trouble. That's what a Webster definition of wicked is. And so
Right.
I use that term, not necessarily religiously, although it certainly applies, but for, to understand that these people, if they're allowed, they will cause and most likely cause a tremendous amount of harm, distress, or trouble in our country. And they're wicked, and they're morally very bad, because they want to change our complete uh, rights to being free and to
Yeah.
worship and to act. So anyway, with that being said, answering your question is that, this has always gone on. We have people that want to be in control and want power, and they will, in political warfare is when they identify, uh, isolate, demonize, so that they can destroy. So remember that there's 4 steps of political warfare. You have to identify who their enemy is, and they're doing that right now with the COVID vaccines and so forth. They've pretty much got it down to where they can identify about 20 to 25% of the American population. They can identify them now, and it's those that are not vaccinated.
The dissenters.
Yeah, the dissenters. And so they're identifying to the point where they're going to get all the way to where there's actually a record, a identification card, that's going to identify, one way or the other, who their political enemies are. And then what they'll do is, if they get away with it, they can get away with it. They'll isolate us. And if they can isolate us and keep us from speaking, keep us from influencing others, then they'll demonize us. And that's what they'll do. And then if they can demonize us and get most of the population to believe what they're saying about this political enemy that they have, then they'll destroy us. And that's what they do. That's political warfare. So identify, isolate, demonize, destroy. And and this has been going on for, centuries and centuries, for thousands of years. That's been the steps, and that's, what they do. And our government, our mechanism to secure liberty was never designed for people to get in power so that they can identify, isolate, demonize, and destroy. But that's what governments always become, because the wicked get infiltrated for power, to force their ideologies, their theologies upon the people. And so I intend on doing the same thing to try to get in control of, the state of Idaho, so that it can be used for the proper purposes, so that we're not identifying, we're not isolating, we're not demonizing, and we're not destroying. And we don't allow that to happen in Idaho.
Right. That would be great, man. It'd be great too if it was kind of an influence to other people running for governor or other governors in other states to enact these kind of mentalities. So what exactly is, you're running as a Republican, governor in Idaho. What is your platform per se?
So I have a Keep Idaho plan. And if you're on the website there, if you look over to the right, there's going to be where you can click on that plan. And I want everybody to go read it, because we're
Okay.
talking about the elimination of property tax. So scroll down a little bit. I can see your screen. Scroll down, keep going. And there to the right, keep going right there at the bottom. There's a Keep Idaho plan. Yep. If you click on that, it'll go through it with you, either online, or you can even download it, to your computer.
Okay.
And it is a comprehensive plan that has been put into place, and something that we've been working on for actually over 7 years, of basically how to, restore liberty, how to keep people free, and also how to implement and use these mechanisms that are in place to secure liberty. So, some of those things include the elimination of property tax, restoring, restoring our system of restitution, getting away from the system of incarceration and restoring it back to a system of restitution. I'm talking about our justice system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's tons of detail in there. I have an economic plan in there, um, taking back our lands. 63% of our our land base in Idaho is controlled by the federal government. So we're gonna take that back, and 72% of our subsurface mineral rights are claimed and controlled by the federal government. We here in Idaho, we can't even pay our own bills without the federal government paying them for us, because they're taking control of all our land and wealth and resources here, and well, most of it in Idaho. Um, Fixing the affordable housing crisis that we're facing. That's part of our economic growth plan, and I encourage people to go and to browse through this plan and to get familiar with it. I encourage people across the country to adopt this plan, and across the world to adopt it, because if you would apply this plan in wherever you're living, you'll be free and prosperous. Basically, much of it is going back to what we know brings prosperity. And how do we know it? Because the founders implemented it, uh, at the beginning of this country, and it propelled us into the most prosperous, wealthy, free country um, ever known, to man. And why we abandoned those principles is beyond me. And why we're adopting other, terrible, well, why we've done it, we've been doing it for the last 100 years, so it's not like anything new, but why we would abandon principles that we know, and practices and cultures and things that we know work and bring freedom to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Uh, these principles apply to everybody equally, and they bring prosperity and freedom and happiness to everybody equally. Why we abandon those is only a wicked design. Again, what's the wickedness? It's harmful. It's it's morally very bad. It's causing or likely to cause harm, distress, and trouble. And that's what's happening by adopting these other plans. And I'm proposing we go back, that we keep Idaho, Idaho.
Dude, I love it. And actually I didn't want to do a whole lot of digging because I know we were going to have an in-depth conversation, but looking at this plan that you put together, I mean, I'm impressed. I really am. I really like a lot of the things that I'm reading without going into detail. I mean, section 1's talking about eliminating property tax, eliminating personal income tax, personal property tax, and taxes only collected through consumption. And then with your economic growth plan, taking Idaho's lands back, solving the affordable housing crisis, health, freedom, and body autonomy, making Idaho a financial freedom state, recognition and acceptance of prominent cryptocurrencies by the state. I mean, I'm a proponent of cryptocurrencies, so I like that one as well. Section 3, exalting justice, your restoration and restitution laws, empowering communities to end drug abuse, empowering police to act according to their conscience, eliminating civil asset forfeiture, ending cronyism and corruption, and the social prosperity has some really good features as well. Ending abortion, education freedom, gun rights and defense of the Second Amendment. I think that we need to be teaching gun safety in schools like we do driving and sex education. So I worked for the National Rifle Association, and I'm a proponent of the Constitution. The Idaho State Healthcare Exchange, parental rights, which is a big issue right now, ending welfare. And then with your maximizing government efficiency, elimination of state licensures. I hope I said that right. Licensures and changing the culture of government, and then using blockchain technology for state interactions. And another good thing about using blockchain technology with government efficiency is that it allows for transparency.
That's right.
Which is something that we don't get very often with our current government, which is interesting. So you mentioned demonizing. How are you faring against your opponents?
Well, we're gaining momentum and controlling the narrative every day. It seems like every week somebody comes out, that's either a national or a local figure here in Idaho, and they come out in support, or they write an article, something to the effect of support. And they're doing it on their own. It's not like I'm twisting their arm behind the scenes.
Right.
I don't work that way, and I don't have that type of influence, and neither do I want that type of influence. So they're doing it on their own, I think, because they believe and they understand the dangers we're in, and they know, that I will stand against it. And even though I may not, if this was even 2 years ago, if this election was even 2 years ago, I probably wouldn't be a good candidate. I probably would have never run. And maybe in 10 years, we can hope that I'm not going to be a good candidate in 10 years. That things will be back down to where they need to be, but I am made for this time right now. My experience, my life, what's happened to me, what I understand and know, I was built for this time right now. And that is to stand and just say, hell no, you're not going to do this to us. And recognize the enemies that we actually have. And so, that's the communication that I've been, telling people. And a lot of people are agreeing with it across the state that, look, we have to have somebody that's willing to actually fight and say no, someone who has experience and someone who's been successful at doing it. And I don't think there's anybody with my credentials out there. And I say that only because of my experience and history, and a lot of it, wasn't my choice. Most of it wasn't my choice.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, man. I don't think listening to you and listening to what's being said, there's with having the little bit of a relationship I have with you and doing the work of researching you, you don't seem like the type of person who does anything for self-righteous, egotistical purposes. It seems like you kind of get thrown into things against your wishes, but you always stand where you need to stand. And that's some of the things that I greatly appreciate. And even you saying a few years ago you wouldn't be a good candidate, or maybe even 10 years from now, if things were to get better, you wouldn't be a good candidate. I mean, it just speaks volumes about you as an individual. I feel like the reason you're doing this is it's a dirty job and someone's got to do it. No one's doing it. So Ammon's stepping up.
Yeah. And that, I love my neighbors. I love my children. I love my family enough that at a time like this, I can't just step back and say, because it's going to bear dire consequences if we do not check what is happening. It just we have to check what's happening. We cannot allow this to go on. And we're talking about, we've got, the federal government coming down and saying that they have control of businesses from Washington, D.C. We've got them pretty much forcing or coercing, businesses to inject, chemicals into their employees' bodies, or their employees have to, quit or get fired. We have this, like, even in Idaho, we have a governor who issued an emergency order and caused thousands of businesses to shut down that never opened up again. He ordered that churches be closed. And actually in Idaho, we were the first state in the union to have people arrested for going to church outside. They were going to church outside and they were still arrested. That's what's going on. There was a cessation of all travel in Idaho. The governor actually ordered us here in Idaho to stay in our houses, and that we weren't to come out of our houses without his permission. Now, luckily, most people didn't comply. Well, very few people complied in Idaho, which is actually the best way to overcome and combat tyranny, is not to comply. But they tried it. They tried to force it. They could have tried to force it even further. And I believe they would have if it was been isolated, if people would have if more people would have complied, and then they would have just isolated the few that didn't comply. I mean, this is where we're at in our country. This is real stuff. This is, this is stuff that surpasses the. Can you imagine if the King of Great Britain would have ordered people to stay in their homes? I mean, that's not even. I mean, that's not even the level that of tyranny and that they were facing back then.
Well, even back, when we talk about pre-revolution and revolutionary time periods, Americans were getting upset over taxes being raised by pences. We're talking pennies. Not even really that exorbitant of an amount, but it wasn't the amount, it was the principle.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of things have changed with Americans. Now, you mentioned, I saw the video, it was the live stream you did a couple days ago, where you were talking about businesses, kind of what you were mentioning about how a private business can't, even though the owner of the business owns the property, owns the business, can't do what he wants to do with the business because the local municipality, the governments are trying to say, no, you cannot. I want to tell you something that happened with me, Ammon, and maybe you already know this, but I want to compare it to what you talked about, because you're saying that a business should have the right to choose how to operate its business and not be told what they can and cannot do. Well, I had some issues, lots of issues, getting strikes from YouTube. And I got a strike on October the 8th, and they removed 2 videos. One didn't give me a strike, but one was a private video, and the other was a unlisted video. So it doesn't matter how your video is on YouTube. If it's private, unlisted, it's still on YouTube, and it could be affected. But long story short, I was looking at I was researching to see what had happened to a lawsuit. PragerU, which is a nonprofit, was suing YouTube because they were having a lot of issues with censorship, videos being removed and such. And they were in a California court, federal court, and apparently it was February of 2020. I didn't hear about the outcome of it. I mean, obviously the timing of that, there was a lot of things going on around the world. So something like that kind of got washed under the news. But PragerU lost. And the federal judge in California said to PragerU that Google and YouTube, as private corporations, are not beholden to the First Amendment. The First Amendment does not apply to them. Now, for me, I'm thinking I can invest in both of these entities publicly, and there's no private membership association to join or private contract to join up with YouTube or Google. It's all public. So where is the privacy aspect, the private part of it, to where the First Amendment doesn't apply to them, but yet Americans who are running a business and should be able to say it's private or public don't have that right because the local government is saying that they don't? What are your thoughts on just that whole hypocrisy?
Yeah, it is hypocrisy, but most of it is the business owners bad. And I'll tell you why. If the federal government comes down, or the state or the county, or doesn't matter, comes down into your business and says you have to run your business a certain way, and you comply, you just shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. So like right now, these businesses, because they just, they're so passive, business owners and so forth, so passive. They don't want any trouble. Oh, the federal government tells us if we have 100 more employees that we have to vaccinate, so then you have to do it. No, you don't. You don't have to. And there's many quotes from the even Supreme Court today, like them or not, believe in their justice or not. There's many quotes that say, look, there's a lot of problems that we would resolve, but people don't bring them to us because they're not fighting. They're just complying. And these businesses say, hell no, you don't get to decide what I'm going to do and the conditions of my of employment in my business. Hell no, you're not going to do that to us. We'll fight you to the very end, and then we'll still not comply. And that's how you win. That's how you win.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that because they're such a weak people that don't understand liberty. They don't understand what preserves liberty. And there's plenty of examples that it's not the courts or or the ballot box that preserves liberty. Liberty's preserved, by claiming, using, and defending your liberty. And it is, I look at it like if I decided to make shoes, which I don't make shoes, I'd probably be a terrible shoemaker. But if, let's say I was, and I made a good shoe and people wanted it, and I decided I wanted to sell it to anybody who wants to come through my door. So I say, shoemaker company, and I say, open to the public, and people come in my door and buy shoes. That doesn't mean I'm giving up my right. I could tell anybody, I don't care if they're a fat white man and I don't like them. I could
Yeah, you have
tell
the
them
right to tell them to leave your business.
I don't to leave my business. And why? Because my business is my private property. It is my labor, my property. When I make those shoes and I buy the material and I use my labor to make those shoes, and just because I'm saying I'm open to the public doesn't mean all of a sudden I lose my rights as a property owner. And that's what we have to understand. And that's why the court rightfully ruled against Prager University. And I'm kind of sad that Prager University don't understand those principles. And another good example is the cake maker. Remember that?
Yeah.
He didn't want to bake a cake for a gay couple.
Right.
And so they forced him, and he lost all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court says, no way. Private property is our private businesses. Our businesses are private property. And if we force a cake maker to make a cake for somebody he doesn't want to make a cake, we just made a slave out of him.
That's true.
We just made a slave. Now, anybody who wants to come in the door, he has to serve. So that's servitude. That's slavery. And we don't do that. We don't believe in slavery. And same with employment. Like an employer can say, look, you're going to be my slave here and you're going to do this and this and that. But an employee can say, well, go fly a kite. I'm gone. And that's the balance, right? That's the balance. But if you mess it up and you say somehow an employer has to employ that person, well, what if you flip it around? It says that now the employee has to be employed by that person. Well, that's the things that communists do.
Yeah.
Right? We don't believe in that. So it's much safer and the right way to say, look, government doesn't have authority in this realm, this jurisdiction. This is private property, and a business owner gets to decide. And those customers who don't want to come to the business, they get to decide. And those employees who don't want to work for that business, they get to decide, just like the employer does. That's called free trade. Willing buyer, willing seller.
I mean, the thing with almost like you mentioned, it kind of reminds me of a lot of the things. I'm 46, growing up, all the censorship stuff that was going on. Think about someone like Howard Stern. Like back when he was on, it was just like people just chose to tune out. If they didn't want to hear him, they just chose to tune out.
Right.
Then as things started progressing, we started getting into the Alex Jones age of censorship, where it's just like, we're just going to shut him down because no one's going to stand up for him anyways.
Well, and you have to say, well, why? Well, that's political warfare. They were isolating him so he didn't have a voice, so they can demonize him, so they can stop him and destroy his message. That's political warfare. And that's why, another reason why it is so important that we don't interfere with free trade, or don't allow the government to interfere with free trade, because it's always used by one regime or another to destroy their political enemies. And it's just way safer. It's way safer on the side of freedom.
So the other candidates that are running against you I was kind of getting at this, but are they implying any political warfare against you? I mean, are they trying to make you out as this article says here, that your mother didn't name you anti-government activist Ammon Bundy?
Right.
But I mean, are you getting that from because obviously people want to win, and you've got this interesting past. So are your opponents, even Republican or Democratic or whatever the other parties are, the Constitutional Party, are they independents? Are they attacking your character? Is there political warfare going on about you, the anti-government activist running for governor?
So it's interesting because what we have is these people, these like establishment people, there's not much difference between them, like an establishment Republican and an establishment Democrat. There's just not. They're establishment,
Right.
and so they'll help each other and use each other. So like the establishment Republicans will get the establishment Democrats to try to say things that they don't want to say, and that's what's been going on, and now it will come to the point where, because I'm already leading in most of the polls, um, they at first they tried to like attack me at the very beginning, and then they realized they were just making a martyr out of me, so they stopped doing that. Then they went to the ignore him, let's ignore him. So they did that for a few months, and they realized that that wasn't working because I was just gaining more and more ground and momentum and more support. So now they're back to, okay, we've got to, attack him. And yeah, they're using those tactics, but they're mostly using the liberals to do it. But I know what'll happen probably right around the beginning of the year. They will start directly attacking me in those ways. But I have to say that in most ways, I'm immune. I'm immune to it. When they do that, they actually bring me more supporters. And there's not a whole lot that my enemy can do as long as I stay clean, and I don't do anything that is immoral or wicked myself, and I try to do the best I can to be a good person. As long as I don't do something contrary to that, I'm somewhat immune to them. um, oh, it's old news. What is the local statesman here going to say anything worse than national news has said for the last 7 years? I mean, people have heard it over and over and again. They either believe it or they don't believe it. Or what happens is when they find out the truth because they meet me or watch videos or go through what, then they're like, wait a minute, this guy isn't what the media has been saying. And then it makes them mad because they were lied to. And they
Yeah.
become like avid supporters after that. And that's what's been happening all over the state. So, I mean, I am a political opponent that is way different than they're used to dealing with. Kind of to finish up your question, though, what will happen, especially if I win the Republican nomination, is the establishment Republicans will openly join with the Democrats to try to destroy, to overcome me. Meaning they will try to get their Democrat nominee to actually beat me in the generals, which will start in Idaho. But believe me, they love power more than they love any type of principle. They more than they love the party. Even they love power.
That's sad. That's really sad to think about too. I want people to realize there are ways that they can support you. So I want to encourage people to go over to votebundy.com and check out all the different tabs at the top, the about, the support, media, events, resources, the store where you can donate, all that good stuff. I did want to ask you because I want to be respectful of your time and in soon, but I wanted to ask you about the endorsement by Trump ally Roger Stone, because I was asking you before we started recording, are you,
Mm-hmm.
because of your past and because you're running as a Republican, were you getting lumped in with the Trump crowd? Which, and you were asking me, what does that mean? There's just a big, you see what's happening with January 6th, so that's all around Trump as well. And for the record, I was there. I went there as a journalist to Patriot to see what was going on. I was lucky enough, smart enough that when situations happened at the Capitol, I was right there, not at the building. I was there's streets that go around it. I was on the street, either on the front or the back side. I was live on Facebook when all that was going on. So that way, in case, because I've had FBI go and visit some friends of mine who have been in DC, I haven't had any any blowback because I was very transparent about everything I was doing and making sure I was taking pictures and doing videos and things like that. But yeah, I was curious about your thoughts about Roger Stone endorsing you.
Yeah, so it was a connection that I had. A good friend that I have, uh, directly knows and communicates with Roger Stone quite a bit. And so he asked Roger Stone, not really at my request, but he asked Roger Stone if he would endorse me and then connected us. And I like Roger. Now, one thing about Roger Stone is he came to my family when I was in prison. He came to Las Vegas, and for that reason, and spoke to people about the atrocities that were happening with my family. He didn't need to do that. He didn't need to put himself at risk. And so, I gained a lot of respect for Roger Stone for doing that. That he would come, really just out of concern for my family and understanding how difficult it is to be politically prosecuted, and that we were being, in terrible circumstances at the time. I was in solitary confinement, and to me that speaks to his character. And then so when I was like, yeah, I would love his endorsement. And I'm so grateful that he would once again come out, speak the truth, say I'm not afraid to put my name with Ammon Bundy, and that he's not what people think, or what the media, not what the media has been saying.
Right.
And is that a close connection to Trump? Yeah, absolutely. Trump and Roger Stone are good friends. They've been friends. Roger Stone has served as a campaign advisor for him. But also, Roger Stone served as a campaign advisor for Ronald Reagan and George Bush and many others as well. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's cool,
now, now I've been open communication with Roger quite a bit. We talk, and I enjoy communication with him, and I think he's a patriot. To be honest with you, I think he's a great patriot, and glad to have him on.
You mentioned Nevada. Was that he came to visit you in prison, jail right after the standoff?
Well, it was before we went to trial. He came out and did a public address in Las Vegas and gathered a bunch of people and got national attention upon what was happening to us. Yeah, and he spoke against what the federal government was doing, and then of course later the FBI comes after him, and Trump pardoned him. I mean, he's been politically prosecuted just like us, and it came after us, but he understands that, and we have to understand that we have some terrible enemies to liberty in our country, and the federal government is completely wicked and wasted. And anybody who's now, they would love to destroy Trump, and I don't agree with every position Trump has taken. Although I do think he did a lot of good for our country, especially economically. And but I don't need to agree with everything everybody does to understand who's my ally and who's my enemy. I mean, I'm sure you and I could probably find something we disagree with. Sure we'd agree with most things, but we'd probably find something we disagree upon. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be your enemy. That doesn't mean I have to make you my enemy. That doesn't mean I wouldn't fight right side by side you if need be. And I hope I could call on you to do the same. And that's how I view, that's how I view President Trump. That's how I view Roger Stone. That's how I view, General Flynn. That's how I view these people who are true patriots. I might not completely agree with everything. They might not completely agree with me, but they're patriots that love this country, and they understand that there is a true enemy, and that liberty is precious, and it can be gone just like that. And it could put us into hundreds of years of dark ages where our children, grandchildren never even know what liberty feels like or what liberty is.
That's sad to think about. Just that statement alone. That's enough for people that they should be standing up. 100%. Now, I did want to ask one last thing. Is it November 8th, 2022 is when the actual voting is going to be taking place to decide who is the winner of the governorship race?
Okay, so there is an election in November. It's a general election, but that's not where the governor is decided in Idaho. The governor is decided in the primaries.
And the primaries are
because that's in May of 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get you back on before then. That's the reason why I was asking.
Yeah, and that's a message that I'm glad you brought up, because a lot of people in Idaho and across the country think But let's just talk Idaho, because Idaho is a little different, because we're such a dominant Republican state that whoever wins the Republican nomination wins always in the last 5 decades has won. I think it's even longer than that, has won the governor, because there's just no Democratic response to him. So if you want a say in who is governor in Idaho, you have to vote in May as a Republican, not in November. So yeah, of course,
but obviously you got to vote in November too.
Yeah,
but,
you will vote in
but
November
it all starts with May of 2022.
That's right.
Okay.
And so you have to vote in the primaries. So I'm telling everybody, if you're an independent, if you're a constitutional party, if you're an unaffiliated voter, which there's a ton of them, you need to register as a Republican, or your voice will not be heard in this election. Period.
So does it matter? So in Idaho's sense, it matters what party you're registered to for the registering to vote?
Yeah, in 2008.
I would just think it was just a vote that matters. It shouldn't be what your political stance is. But
well, in 2008, the Republican Party decided to go with a closed election, and so that's just the reality. Maybe we can change that later, but the reality right now is it's a closed election, so people need to register. It's very easy. You can do it online. Register as a Republican, and then vote for Ammon Bundy. I mean, it's that simple.
It's that simple.
Go
register to vote. Register to vote as a Republican in Idaho by May. By May. There we go.
Yeah.
Because if you do it in May, you might be a day late, $1 short.
Yeah, by May. That's right.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, we're gonna have to definitely revisit this conversation, maybe even a couple times before May, because I always like talking to you and find out what's going on in your neck of the woods and how you're standing up for all of us and how you're standing up for is it Idahoan? Idahoans,
yeah.
Idahoans.
I don't know if that.
Idahoans.
Yeah, I don't know if that has to do with hoeing in the for
on the
potatoes.
street or farming.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't know. We're still making that decision. Kind of like Idaho is determining. We have an identity crisis right now. We're determining whether we're going to be conservative or whether we're going to be Republican.
Right.
So that's I keep saying we need to be conservative. We don't Republican and conservatism is two totally different things. So anyway, that's where we're at.
Well, you have any final words, any final thoughts you want to add to today's conversation, especially for anybody who may be watching in Idaho?
Well, I want people to understand that the political climate is just right in Idaho for things to change, to really change for the better. And if Idaho can do it, it can be, an example to other states and to the rest of the world. And you cannot think the same way that you thought before. Things are completely different. The political element is different. What's going on is different. The level and force of government is different. Everything changed in 2020. Everything. And so we need to be aware of that. And that means all the rules that when it comes to.
Ooh, I just lost Ammon. Just lost him. Hopefully he can come back in and finish up his thoughts here. Looks like he was having some internet issues. So I'm going to go ahead and wait just a moment, but I will have links down below for everything that we talked about on today's episode. There you are.
Anyway, I don't know what happened, but I was just, making kind of just letting people understand the difference between the way it used to be and now. We have to think different. We have to understand that even more than before, our liberties are in danger. And I plan on standing against that and just applying these simple, beautiful principles of freedom to the state of Idaho, which will push us into economic prosperity, liberty, peace, happiness. And those who want to be left alone will be able to be left alone. It's going to be wonderful if we can pull this off, and we're asking for your help.
Awesome. Well said, man. If you can just bear with me, I want to finish up closing the video and stop recording. I do encourage people to make sure they're checking out the links. Everything's going to be down below. VoteBundy.com. Go over to YouTube and subscribe to his YouTube channel. same name, Ammon Bundy. And you can also check out peoplesrights.org. Check out the previous conversations that we did. And obviously, Ammon will be back. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel and make sure you're subscribed. As always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change.